scenario. You wake up in the middle of the night and your house is shaking. You're in the middle of an earthquake. And so you run outside and you hear your neighbors screaming and you see their houses are all collapsed and there's rubble everywhere. And then the next thing you know, you hear a crashing behind you. And you turn around and watch your house collapse with the rest of your family inside. This may not have happened to any of you guys, but many Haitians have similar stories to tell. I've not personally been to Haiti, but I've done extensive research on the 3 disasters that I'm going to be discussing with you guys today. Haiti is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, and it has been repeatedly struck by disasters which have further crippled its already struggling economy. Today, I'm going to talk about the January 12, 2010 earthquake, Tropical Storm Isaac, and Hurricane Sandy. First is the worst. Haiti's foundations shake. On January 12, 2010, a 7.0 earthquake hit Haiti, and according to Carolyn Miller, it killed 1.5 million people, it killed over 200,000 people, and 1.5 million people lost their homes. And even until this day, many of those people are still living in tarp shelters. And when this disaster struck, many organizations rushed to the country to assist with medical aid and trying to get the country back on their feet. And one of these organizations was called Merlin, and they provided medical attention for people who had been injured in the earthquake, and they set up their kind of headquarters in Port-au-Prince, which is the capital of Haiti, on a tennis court. And this girl right there, her name is Diana, and she was with her older brother Cal in their house when the earthquake hit, and a piece of concrete fell and hit her on the head and knocked her down, and then when she was on the ground, as you can see, her hand, another piece of concrete fell and crushed her hand, and so Merlin helped her. She was one of the first patients admitted to Merlin, and they helped her fix up her hand, and for quite a while they kept her around because they didn't want her finger to get infected. And after she recovered, she was always dancing and singing and just really making all the doctors and assistants at the camp really happy. And she's only 8 years old, or she was at the time. Now let's look at a slightly less devastating disaster, and that would be Tropical Storm Isaac, which, according to SOS Children's Villages, struck on August 27th, 2012, and killed 19 people. And after just talking about this earthquake, it's not nearly as devastating of a disaster, but one of the biggest things with this disaster is that people who were living in tarp shelters from the earthquake lost their shelters, lost what little or few possessions they had. And SOS Children's Villages was a organization, once again, that helped orphans who were affected by Tropical Storm Isaac, and they provided education, food, obviously housing for the orphans, and that's also, I got that information from their website. And one man whose testimony I was able to find, his name was Usner Benjamin, and he was warned about the storm from like a news channel or something, and found a megaphone from a friend of his and rushed around his town and told people about the storm coming, and was able to help a lot of people. And this was, of course, after he got his family to safety in a school, and they were living in a tarp neighborhood, but their tarp home was not destroyed, even though their neighbors, or many of their neighbors, were. The last disaster that I'm going to be talking about today is a little bit closer to home, and that is Hurricane Sandy. And I remember just probably about a month ago now, I was hearing all about Hurricane Sandy and how it was coming to the U.S., and I think the U.S. actually got hit worse by this hurricane than Haiti did, because Haiti only caught kind of the outer rim of the hurricane, so it could have been a lot worse than Haiti. But as you can see here, a lot of people's homes were flooded, and they did lose their possessions. And one thing that I love about this picture is that you can see that the tarp that makes this lady's home was given by an organization after the earthquake, so she's been living there for at least 2 years. And with all these disasters, it's just one disaster after another, and you know, the floods, even though they're not killing as many people, just kind of take the people off their feet again. And one lady whose testimony I was able to find was giving birth during the storm, and she was just in her tent, and there weren't any midwives. She only had her sisters with her, and she gave birth and fled her tent because this hurricane was raging, and then she had to worry about how she was going to feed herself and be able to take care of her new baby boy. And according to John Watts with, I believe, the Guardian newspaper, 70% of Port-au-Prince, which once again is the capital of Haiti, 70% of their important crops were destroyed by this hurricane, and over 50 people died, and there were thousands without their shelters that they'd been living in. So before I close, I'll summarize what I've talked about so far. 3 major disasters have recently struggled the already crippled Haiti, or economically crippled Haiti, and those are the January 12, 2010 earthquake, the Tropical Storm Isaac, I always want to say Desert Storm, and Hurricane Sandy. And many Haitians face hopeless situations, but they can really only do one thing. And I think Walt Disney put it really well when he said, "Around here, we don't look backwards for very long. We keep moving forward." Any questions?
What got you interested in this topic?
Honestly, I kind of misunderstood. I think I misunderstood what our options were, and so I just kind of picked Haiti for a topic because I didn't really know what else I could pick that would interest me very much. And then I started researching it, and the more I researched it, the more excited I got about it, and the more excited I got to be able to talk about it.
Do you have a desire to go there someday now that you've researched it?
I could see myself going there someday. I don't know if I would be there for how long I would be there, but I could definitely see myself going there someday. Any other questions?